Welcome to the Scrutineers series. I'm Emily Levy, founder and director of Scrutineers.org. I'm delighted to be collaborating with whowhatwhy.org to introduce a series of election protection podcasts designed to help you understand the risk to our elections, from voter suppression to lack of security. We'll be talking about what you can do to protect the voters and protect the votes. We're training a fairness force to help make sure no one stops you from voting and all votes are counted accurately. Early voting is underway in the all-important Georgia Senate runoff. While the candidates are campaigning, telling voters who to vote for and what is at stake, dozens of nonpartisan and community groups are working to make sure voters have the information they need about when, where, why, and how to vote. Groups outside of Georgia are supporting with handwritten postcards to voters, fundraising, and working to ensure that the election is fair and secure. My guest today is Triana Arnold James. She's the president of the Georgia National Organization for Women and is a now board director for the Southern District. She's a vocal advocate for the Equal Rights Amendment and was a candidate for Lieutenant Governor of Georgia in 2018. Triana is a veteran and she's also an accountant and auditor. Welcome, Triana. I'm so glad you're with us today, and thank you so much for taking time out at this really busy time.
Thank you, Emily, for having me. Thank you so much. I'm glad we were able to connect.
I'm glad we were too, and thank you for your flexibility about that. I would love to hear what Georgia Now's piece of the puzzle is for the runoff. I think election work is not really what people think of when they think of the National Organization for Women, so tell me how you're involved.
Great. And where Georgia Now comes in, and I bring my expertise in with that, is that I look at, number one, I'm from rural Georgia. Number two, I analyze the issues that we're facing, that we've been facing since the 70s here in Georgia, especially when it comes to getting out the vote and voter suppression. And so with those challenges that I know and that I'm able to analyze, I bring those to the National Organization for Women and say, okay, here's how we could look at this. Here's how we could do this a little bit better, based on my history and experience. Came up with a strategy, mostly focusing on the rural areas, because I believe that the rural areas of Georgia is suffering the most and are often neglected. I understand that the majority of votes are going to come from the main counties, Fulton, Cobb, DeKalb, Clayton, Henry County, those what we call the Black Belt. But, rural counties can help candidates basically get over the top, especially Democratic candidates, because that has been the strategy for a long time for Republican candidates. They focus on rural areas. And so that's what we've done. And helping to get out the vote, we've done lit drops and text banking, phone banking. We have a whole strategy, and I won't give it too far away.
Definitely not. No, hold it close to the vest where you need to.
Yes. But we're doing the work.
So what will January 5th look like for you and for your volunteers? What will be happening on that day that you can share with me?
We will get out the vote. We will make sure that people are exercising their right to vote. I think that it's important that people do vote, no matter who they vote for. I think it's important that they exercise that right. There's a lot of people that have, died and worked hard, for us to have this right to vote. And I think it's just an obligation. I think it's our duty to get out the vote and encourage others too. I'm a super voter. I vote in every election. I even vote for dog catcher. So
has that actually ever been on the ballot? People always use that as an example of like the down ballot race, but I don't know if anybody actually does vote for dog catcher.
I think the things like the benefits of the Humane Society, the budget and things like that, anything that's dealing with the Humane Society sometimes are on the ballot. So
okay, that counts. We'll go for that. We'll go for that. So There is so much activity in Georgia right now, so many groups working on the election because it's hugely significant for Georgia and for the whole country. And I'm wondering what you've seen that excites you most in this runoff, work for the runoff.
What has excited me the most is voter turnout.
It's been really amazing.
That's
because
number one. Number two,
typical turnout for a runoff, as I've heard, is something like 15%, and the turnout already, with just a few days of early voting having happened, is, I believe, significantly over that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because people are like, you got my vote once, I'm not coming out again. That's it. I'm done. Vote once and that's it.
But not this time.
And so I'm glad that turnout is up. I'm glad that people have, I think it's 2 million have requested absentee ballot. And one of the other things that I'm excited about is young people. Young people are voting. We had 23,000 people that are turning 18 by January 5th. And there are different organizations that are helping to get our young people out to vote. And I think young people are smart and in tune. They're ready to change the world. And one of the ways they want to change the world is through their vote.
Fantastic. And so with so many groups working on getting out the vote and making sure voters have the information they need, how are you making sure that everything is covered and there's not a huge amount of duplication of efforts? Is there good coordination happening between the groups on the ground?
There are, except when it comes to phone banking. I get about maybe on an average of 25 calls per day.
Oh my gosh.
Per day, of calls.
This is you as a voter, not you as the leader of now, right?
Yeah, as a voter. That saying, hey, do you have a plan to vote? Are you gonna vote? Who are you gonna vote for? And all of that. So yeah, I get a good 25 calls per day. And I think that I think that phone banking and text banking need to be streamlined. Like once that person has been called, they're off the list, because every organization is pretty much sharing the same list. And I could tell because there are some organization I may put my office phone number, but with the Secretary of State, I have my cell number, which I hate that I did that, and that will be changing, because so I get more calls on my cell phone than I do my office phone number, and so that's why I could tell that, and so that just needs, it's like you were sharing the same list. Once that person has been called, check them off the list so they're not called again.
Do you think there's any hope for that coordination to happen?
No, unless we get the right people in office.
But for this election, there's not. It's kind of
no.
too late for that
I think
happen.
that until January 5th, I'm gonna still get that many calls. And I tried to even go through, because I have an iPhone, and silence my phone. But it silenced other calls that I need to get. And so I was like, okay, so that's not working. So
yeah.
But it needs to be fixed. The whole system needs to be fixed from making sure that polling locations are open and available, making sure that the right amount of people is working, poll watchers, accountability, all of that needs to be overhauled.
I so agree with you. And speaking of that, I know you've really spoken about the importance of transparency and accountability. And I'm wondering, as an accountant and an auditor, whether you consider the audit of the November election, which only looked at the votes in the presidential race, to have been a thorough audit. As an auditor, does that meet your criteria for what an actual audit is?
I believe it has. I wish we would have done this in 2016, but they, recertified the recertification of the recertification of the certified of the election. So they've done it like 5 times, especially here in Georgia. And so it could be tweaked a little bit better so that on day one we have accuracy. Well, when I say day one, I mean the day after the election, that is accurate. However, I believe that that they've done a pretty good job of auditing. I just wish we would have had it in 2016.
Oh, I agree with you about when it comes to the presidential race, and I don't consider auditing one race to be a thorough audit of the election, and I'd also really like the audits to include more than the auditing of the counting of the vote, but also the chain of custody, the procedures to make sure they're in place, the tracking of the ballots that are used and unused, and all sorts of checks on the machine. So I would really like to see a much more robust audit in Georgia than what you have. But I agree with you that when it comes to the presidential race, we know what the real results were of that race this time.
Well, we had that issue a couple of years ago in Gwinnett, where there was a 443 difference in the 7th congressional district race, and that had to be audited and redone. Not so much as like people coming out to vote, but to recount after recount. And it turned up, a difference in the vote. So you're absolutely right. Not only do we need to look at the top of the ticket, but we need to look at down ballot ballot races as well. So, and you're absolutely right. In a runoff, most of the time it's 15%, and that proved in the last runoff before the November election during the primary runoff. In certain counties, only 15% came out to vote.
Yeah, we need a lot better turnout than that in every election. And I think that the messages right now, at least that I'm hearing in national media, are really confusing, because on one hand, I'm hearing, from the Republican side, oh, there's all this voter fraud. And we know that those claims are false, that voter fraud is not a real problem in this country. And yet there are vulnerabilities with the system that are real, and those are not the ones that are being talked about, the vulnerabilities of the electronic system. And that's where, the way I see it, a lot more transparency is needed. And so what we're doing at Scrutineers is getting a window into that black box of a system, that computerized election system that we can't really see into it in very many ways, but there are some ways that we can, and so we're dispatching people to do that. So like, for example, at the end of voting on election night, when the machines are all shut down, the tabulators that count the votes in the polling places print out what's called a poll tape that has the totals for that machine. And those are required by law to be hung on the outside of the door so the public can see the totals for each machine. And we are actually dispatching people to as many polling places as we can to take pictures of those, because sometimes the vote counts change when they're announced later, and they absolutely shouldn't. But if they do, then we have the original evidence of what the count was at the polling place. So there's things like that that we can do to increase the transparency, even of a system that is not really designed to be transparent at all. And I know transparency is something that you care about, and I'm wondering if Georgia now is involved in any of that stuff yet.
No, not yet. But we do work towards holding, people accountable and ask, for documentation. We have had people be boots on the ground, and some of them, now I take that back, some people are signing up, some members are signing up to be poll watchers, so that we have, in the past, we have, gone to the polling location, taking a picture, of the tape on the door, and make sure, but it's been more about, rather than transparency, it's been more about, the count, seeing who got the most votes, that was on there. But it helped with transparency, because then if there's a problem, people would know, hey, well, this is what it said on this day, and now it's saying this,
Exactly.
what is the problem, and connecting the dots on that. So
So one of the things we're working on that I would love to connect with you more about when we're not on this interview is if you've got poll watchers who are going to be out at the polling places, and we can show them, teach them really quickly what the importance is of taking pictures of those poll tapes, and then we have a streamlined way for them to do it and upload it so that the totals can be compared. It's only a few minutes more work for somebody who's already at a polling place, and yet it could be really important. So I would love to work with you on that if that's a possibility, and I think we can do it in a way that doesn't make extra work for you.
Right, definitely. Well, thank you. But definitely, definitely. I think that's really important because people need to know. The public needs to know where we are, and making sure that their vote has really been counted. So
absolutely, it's so important, and we need to increase the confidence that voters have in the election system. And I know right now in Georgia, among some voters, it's really low. And the way to increase it, to my mind, isn't just to tell people to trust it, but to show them that it's accurate. And that's what some of the things are that we're trying to do.
Exactly.
So,
but I just wanted to say real quickly, I can't really get upset with one side saying that it's voter fraud, because the other side in 2016 was saying the same thing. It was passionate about it. And so if you feel that way, then I think that needs to be addressed, and at the same time accepted, because everybody is not going to be happy with the an outcome of an election. And so every 4 years we go through this, and so that's why I said the whole system need an overhaul. But like, I do believe in what the I can't remember his name, but he said that this has been the most secure elections the United States have ever had. So I do believe that he said, I believe that they took, they learned lessons from 2016 and made sure that we had a secure election. But I don't believe that everybody has total confidence in, the election count.
Yeah, I agree with you that not everybody has confidence. I think Chris Krebs is the person that said that, but that you're referring to. Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you that the system needs a total overhaul. I feel like I don't have enough information to know whether this was the most secure election in U.S. history. I have my doubts about whether it was, but I believe, especially because the margin of victory was so huge for the Biden-Harris campaign, that we know for sure that they won. There are some other races that I feel like really need to be looked into more around the country. So I hope that will happen, and some of my colleagues are looking into some of those. So is the number of phone calls that you as a voter are getting every day, is that an indication that there are plenty of volunteers, or more volunteers still needed?
I think there's an imbalance between all of the campaigns, in that one or two campaigns are doing the most and other campaigns are not. So I think that volunteers are still needed, but I think it needs to be balanced.
Okay, and what about when it comes to the nonpartisan groups? Do they have enough help, or are they still looking for more volunteers?
I think they're still looking for volunteers.
And how can people volunteer with Georgia Now? Are there tasks that you need people to do?
Always.
All right, let's talk about how people can reach you and how they can help.
But yeah, they can go to Georgia-Now. Georgia is all spelled out, now.org, and hit the contact button and say, hey, I would like to volunteer. And we put them on the volunteer list, and we have a volunteer check-in every Wednesday, and to see where people are, see how they're doing, self-care, check up on people, And that's one thing that I love that I do. With all of the volunteers that we have, we do this volunteer check-in just to check on everybody, see how everybody is doing. Not to, talk about more tasks or talk about the election and things like that. It's just to check in, see, hey, how you doing? How you holding up? Are you doing self-care? Are you taking care of your family? Things like that. And so those are the things that we talk about every Wednesday on the volunteer check-in.
Thank you for doing that. That's so important.
That's but we do piece. Need, boots on the ground. That's important. And we got people phone banking and text banking. And we can always use more of that, but we need boots on the ground. We need people that's going to do lit drops and put out signs and things like that. So, and talk to voters face to face. Well, of course, with a mask on it.
Mask to mask. Talk to voters mask to mask. And so that
your mask is for me and my mask is for you.
That's right. That's right. And so voters who are on the ground in Georgia can do some things, but it sounds like the text banking and phone banking could be done even by people who are out of state who care about the election.
Oh yeah, definitely. And writing postcards. Yeah.
Great. I know that there's still time to do some of that, and I hope that people will volunteer. We also at Scrutineers are just starting an idea where people can sponsor a precinct so they can help cover the costs of doing the election protection work at a precinct that needs to happen. And if folks want to know how they can sponsor a precinct, they can go to scrutineers.org. Anything else you want to share with our audience before we finish up and let you go back to your meeting?
I know. No, just thank you so much. Thank you for allowing this opportunity and working with me on my time. It's just been crazy since early voting started on Monday, and little sleep, but that's okay because come January 6th, I'm gonna sleep all day.
Okay, so Triana, I have to ask you, even though it's not Wednesday, are you taking care of yourself? Because you look after your volunteers in that way. How can we help you be able to take care of yourself while you're doing this work?
I can do better. I can do better.
I know it's really a challenge, and I hope that you find in yourself permission to give yourself that, because we need you. We need you for a long time, and to be healthy as you can be, and as well enough rested as you can be. You do need to sleep sometime between now and January 6th. And there are lots of people helping, so it's not all on your shoulders. And I appreciate how much you're stepping up to take responsibility and take leadership.
Thank you so much.
My guest today has been Triana Arnold James, president of the Georgia National Organization for Women. Thank you so very much for joining us, and especially for taking the time in this busy, busy season, and for all the work you're doing for Georgia and the country. Thanks so much for Georgia and the country.
Thank you.
You can find rough transcripts of each episode at whowhatwhy.org/podcast. You're invited to get involved in the election protection movement by joining Scrutineers at scrutineers.org. That's SCRUTINEERS.org. Whether you're a seasoned activist or advocate or have never before worked for social justice, you're welcome. Both Who, What, Why and Scrutineers depend on your support to keep our work going. If you appreciate what we do, please donate through our websites. You'll find Who, What, Why at whowhatwhy.org/donate. Remember to check your voter registration and help others do the same.